The Center for Human Systems invites you to listen in to what people are saying about the Leadership in Self-Mastery program. Enjoy.
I can start with one topic that I think was very memorable to me, which was sound and current data. I come from a small community where we know each other really well. And I realized over the course and over as I spend more and more years in my professional field and my personal life, that people that have known me for a really long time or have been in the same organization for 19 years. So I realized that a lot of times people have ideas of who you are, or you have ideas of who you are, and it's not current. So you may have done something in the organization 10 years ago. Now you've actually evolved, you've changed, you have more experience under your belt, but people are still relating to you as you were before, or you're approaching things with information that you had previously. So I think the whole idea of sound and current data, where actually a lot of our behaviors and our feelings and our approaches are based on things that happened in the past. They're not necessarily taking into account the current situation, the moment that we're in now, and the opportunities that we have now. So that was powerful to me, to think about how to focus in and use sort of what's happening now and not get too bogged down by what happened in the past.
Well, I was also going to say sound and current data, but I have another one as well. But I'll just say one thing briefly about sound and current data, which is also just to remembering to ask myself if this is sound and current, and not jump to assumptions about what is happening or why it's happening, which is really helpful for me now in my work as well, when I'm interviewing clients or taking data in on the system, to really make sure I'm focused on the data and not what I think the data might mean. But that intuition can be helpful and useful, but to use that to ask questions rather than to use that to assume that it's the truth. Another piece for me is around the whole use of self as instrument for change, and the power of self-mastery. And so for me, that sort of was a thread through the entire course. The entire course helped me get better and better at that, which I think is a lifelong journey, and I have seen impacts on it. A really simple example for me was how much as a self I can impact the system of the organization that I am part of, or was part of at the time that I was taking the course. And I remember there was sort of a gossipy culture in part of our organization, and I really didn't like it. And I remember bringing it up in the course and realizing that I had power to change that just by changing myself.
For me, it's hard to choose just one of the themes or disciplines, because they work so beautifully together in kind of a network of ideas. So even just the two we've been talking about so far, conscious use of self and sound and current data, both help you to do what Esther said of staying in the moment, being right here with what's going on. I think if I had to pick one, I would actually pick human system. The sense that we are all inextricably intertwined in one another, and we have enormous influences on one another, whether intended or not. So with conscious use of self, we can intend a certain experience for others, but then we have to keep watching and staying attuned to know, am I having the impact that I want to have?
The grace and beauty and simplicity of these principles, they're not necessarily easy, but they're relatively simple in terms of, it's not like this and then this and then this and then this, and you have to remember all these things in order to be effective at doing this. It's just, as Esther said, this idea of feedback is more about the giver than the receiver. Like, that's a relatively simple, straightforward concept. It doesn't mean it's always easy to engage and remember that. But when you do remember that simplicity of it, that energy opens up. And so that was surprising to me of how powerful these tools are, despite it not being, you don't have to study a massive textbook or several to get this. You just have to master these core concepts, and they're so graceful and powerful at the same time.
To go back to the other thing Esther mentioned, I just have to say that the one piece of the program I've found myself telling others about the most often was the feedback portion, and that feedback is primarily about what's going on for the other person. I think that can be quite a liberating idea, as you were suggesting, Esther.
I went into the course thinking I was going to learn concepts, which I did, and they're super helpful, as I just articulated. And I learned so much about myself that I wasn't expecting to learn at the time. And so I think, David, you just gave a beautiful example of that. So it's a double whammy.
It's really a behavior change program for the individual leader. And that's why the time in the program that I was in, it went over 10 months. And I think time is an important component of the program. It's not just the concepts, what you do in your behavior as you're trying to work through them.
Communications. And she's been at Google for a while working in communications. And then she's in the process of taking classes to become a coach, like an executive coach or life coach, or which I know was many of the people in the course when I took it were coaches, and it seemed like a really great fit. I was sharing with her a little bit about the course because I feel like I think, as Becca said, it really helps to work on the inner part of us, as well as on which then impacts how we approach our world. I would recommend taking this course to people that are at that point where they're willing to really look inside and maybe approach some difficult things even within themselves. Like David was mentioning, we come up on our own patterns and barriers, but to bring our full selves into our work, I would recommend people take this course.
I would recommend any human take this course because anybody can get something out of this. And depending on how much one chooses to bring to oneself and allow for that self-reflection, the greater the amount of self-mastery will be. But I think anyone who is a human, who is part of human systems, whether I use it in my parenting and I use it in my work, these concepts are so fundamental to how we are and interact as beings that I wouldn't necessarily say it's for this person or that person. It's really for humans. I would say that weaving and then the self-learning that comes from the course is really powerful. And I think that the course allows sort of an infinite amount of growth. And it then depends how much the individual shows up to give that growth.
I remember Michael once saying, you can't just get rid of one bad apple. It's not about one bad apple. You think it might be about this one person. Maybe everyone's gossiping about this one person. But really, it's about how the whole system is functioning. And so to take care of that, look at the health of the overall system. And to me, as a health practitioner, that was really, really valuable. How do we influence that system? What are the different influences there? And looking at sort of the health of that whole system. That's what to me was super different and valuable in this course.